Good day to you. This is going to be one of my few or abnormal review of a movie that is actually currently in theaters. I did this a few months ago for Project Hail Mary. Generally, I don't like to do a lot of reviews or reactions to movies that are still in theaters. Because part of it is because I like to go back and watch some of the details of the movies and things like that. And so this also might lead to me reviewing or reacting to a movie twice. And the other thing is I don't like to give away spoilers. It's hard to give a reaction and talk about it from a pastoral standpoint without accidentally tripping up and giving away spoilers. Well, last night I went to this weekend. I've gone to 3 different movies. The first movie I went to see was Mandalorian and Grogu. That's been out for I think 2 weeks now, I think it's been 2 weeks. That movie, it wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It was just good, I guess. It felt like it probably should have been a TV series, a season of of the regular show, because it really felt very episodic the way it played out. But that's not really worthy of a full episode. I also saw Scary Movie, which is kind of following the formula that Scream seems to be going on, where they bring back the old cast. They just call it Scream, but it's not really Scream. It's really Scream 6 or whatever. And so here Scary Movie's doing the same thing. I went to see it, and it had its occasional moments, but it really was not good. I honestly, if it weren't for the fact that I'm too proud to get up and walk out of a movie, I almost did. Not because it was offensive, although I guess at times it was, kind of, maybe. But the real reason is, it just was boring, to be honest. I kind of wanted to take a nap, but if I was going to take a nap, I might as well take it at home and not in the movie theater. So, I love satire, and I can handle raunchy humor at times, but it just wasn't funny. The only thing I really liked, I guess, rewarded me for staying through the movie was the end of it. Like the last couple, 10 minutes or so, I thought was kind of good. But otherwise, it was just, yeah. Anyways, so the movie I'm really reacting to, and you'll probably notice by the title of the video, is I am reacting to Masters of the Universe. And so, let us start with the trailer.
I know most of you don't remember me, but I know all of you. Even though I was stuck light years away on Earth, I never stopped trying to get back home.
Everything changed since you left.
It's all gone. Skeletor took my family. And he destroyed our world.
It's all my fault. I know how it feels to fail. Take the sword. And when you fall, that's your chance to stand tall.
This is my home. I'm gonna fight for it. But I can't do it without you.
Somebody wants to brawl.
I need every man, woman, or whatever that is.
You may have the power, but you're too scared to use it.
Trust me, I know how to use it.
You tell everyone that you're from another planet. It just makes you sound a little very crazy.
So there you have the trailer for the Masters of the Universe. So I went to see this yesterday, and having watched the trailer, admittedly, I really didn't watch the trailer beforehand. I've kind of developed more and more of a habit of not watching movie trailers, and a lot of this has to do with the movie trailers have sometimes ruined movies, or they poorly advertise them and things like that. So like this, I just kind of knew that I was going to go into it cautiously optimistic. So hopeful it's going to be a good movie, but being prepared for the bad. So I'm going to bring it back a little bit. One thing I like of the trailer was the very opening clip. And it's a scene where he's standing before the crowd, standing before all these characters. He says, "You may not remember me, but I remember you." And it's casting over these familiar characters. And I liked this because it was kind of almost putting you, the audience, into his shoes at this moment. Because that is the way we see this movie. This is what this movie was. The assignment to this film was for 40-somethings like myself. Who grew up. We came home after school, and Masters of the Universe was on television. That Filmation animated series. We watched it all the time, and we remember watching it. And the thing is the people who created these, they don't know us. They haven't met us unless maybe we run into them at a Comic-Con or something. But we remember them. I remember the action figures. Of like Ram Man, or of Man at Arms, or of course He-Man himself. I had all of those action figures. I had an action figure for Skeletor and a number of the other villains. And so I remembered them. And so that's kind of putting it into it, because that's what this movie is. It is a nostalgia fest for my generation. And this movie, some of the things it did is, okay, so there is another Masters of the Universe movie. It came out in the 1980s, 1987, I believe, was its release date. I think it was 1987, so it could be on the docket for me to review it, react it for next year. And I did rewatch it last night, actually. When I got home, I rewatched it. And the thing it reminded me is what I remember when I watched it. I didn't like it. I know there's a lot of people that are coming out on the internet. It's like, man, I hope they make this like the original movie. And I'm like, I hope not. I didn't like the original movie. The original movie, I remember sitting there and watching. It's like, I see He-Man, and don't get me wrong, Dolph Lundgren had the look of He-Man. I mean, he had the build, he had the the jawline. I mean, he had the look. But at that time, I don't know if it's that he had a strong accent or what, but for whatever reason, they didn't let him talk very much. And furthermore, they didn't really create the duality between Prince Adam, and He-Man. And they didn't do that. And so there's no Cringer. There's these villains that I didn't know who they were. I'd never seen them before. I do watch, and then there's this side character. They obviously can't do Oracle because back then they didn't have the CGI to do Oracle, and so they bring this this character. I'm like, who? That's really annoying. I don't know who he is, and they put the movie on Earth. And I watched it watching it last night, you can't help but see that they're trying to be Star Wars. You have these Return of the Jedi came out in 1983, only a few years earlier. And so you see these troops marching almost like the Stormtroopers. They look very much like the Death Star troopers. And you see, and then Skeletor is on this throne that looks very similar to the Emperor's throne room from Return of the Jedi. And don't get me wrong, I will say one thing about the Masters of the Universe film from the 1980s is Frank Langella or whatever his name was. He did a good job as Skeletor. He really did. He put in the effort, but doesn't make up for all the other bad. I remember, again, I rewatched that. I remember why I didn't like it, because it didn't feel like He-Man. The Castle of Grayskull didn't look like the Castle of Grayskull. That when they were in Eternia, it didn't look like Eternia. So things like that. Nothing about it made me really feel like I'm watching He-Man. I mean, it looked, I don't know. I mean, even now it kind of looks like Starship Troopers meets Spaceballs, probably. I wouldn't even give the honor of saying it meets Star Wars. It meets Spaceballs. But anyways, but I'll give credit to this new one. This new movie, it got the assignment right. You had Cringer. You had Eternia looked better than the Eternia in the cartoon. Castle Grayskull looked like Castle Grayskull. The Sorceress looked like the Sorceress. Skeletor, he didn't look like Skeletor, but he looked like Skeletor because he had the purple body and everything, the bodysuit, the build. But he looked creepier, and I liked that. Man-at-Arms, I know some people are like, oh, he's black. Oh no. Okay, I kind of have mixed feelings when it comes to race swap. When it comes to movies, race swapping characters or gender swapping characters. My approach to that is I don't say never. I just need to know there's a good reason, and I want to know that it doesn't adversely affect the character. I'm glad that they kept He-Man. So he's recognizable. But when it comes to Man-at-Arms, I don't think I had to have him white. There's nothing about his character that demanded he be white. So I didn't mind. I think Idris Elba did just fine in that role. They have an Asian for Ram Man. And again, there's nothing about Ram Man that makes me think, oh, he's got to be white. I'm okay with what they did with both characters. So I don't have any objection to that. I thought everybody that had every role, the ones that stood out though was in terms of acting performance, the ones that are by far the strongest was Jared Leto as Skeletor. Was amazing. This movie, like I said, it was just so nostalgic when you see was it Reckonek or I feel bad that I can't think of the name of the character, but you see his neck like whoosh, whipping around, and you see they have Fisto, yes, and I love that they acknowledge how bad the names were of these characters. I love they acknowledge the cheesiness of it, and they do it in a clever way. that they come up with the idea that it's Adam, who was 10 years old, came up with these names. And I thought that was such a great way to deal with it. One of the things is we're just watching the trailer. I don't know if this is a problem with Paramount, because, or who, I don't know, was it Paramount that's in charge of these trailers? Maybe it's MG. I don't know who. Whoever was in charge of these trailers, I don't know if there's a problem with them or who it was a problem with. But they really did not do a lot of good justice in this trailer, because they kind of do give the impression that a large portion of the movie is going to be on Earth. And it wasn't. A very small portion was on Earth. And I think them having this part, a section that was on Earth, and even the portal, kind of gives a connection to the backstory of his mother, which is in the cartoon, and also gives a little bit of the and also kind of connects it a little bit to the original film. They do nods to the original film. They don't disrespect it. I think they do a good job of honoring it, but the primary goal here is to honor the original series. I think the costume is probably alluding to the costume you eventually see with He-Man, is alluding to some of the later cartoons, and I like that nod. They do a good job of nodding to a variety of the versions, but primarily they're focusing on that original cartoon from the 80s. And like I said, it is a nostalgia fest. If you grew up with this, it is such a joy to see all this unfold on screen. And I got to give a lot of credit. I got to look it up on my phone here. Yeah, a lot of credit to Daniel Pemberton, who was the composer of this. I love the music in this movie. When I got into my car and I started driving home, the thing I decided to do was I turned on I went on to Apple Music and I listened to the film score. I thought this is a good score because it gives a little bit of a 90s, and it feels like it could have been in the original series. It feels like a genuine descendant of what we got of the Masters of the Universe from the 80s. And I love that music, and then very similar to what Ghostbusters Afterlife does, it does reward you with the original theme. And when you do hear it, it's like, for those who grew up with this, it's like just nostalgia overload. After everything you've seen through the course of the movie, you almost get a little bit of a tear in your eye, remembering back to what you grew up in. And there's got to be... I imagine there's got to be a discussion in there about that. This is the purpose of my channel. And why I review movies. I don't just review whether a movie is good or not. I do that. But I also look at it from a pastoral perspective. Theologically, philosophically, things like that. And I feel like there's something to be talked about, that nostalgia. Mattel, who created the He-Man toys, also created Barbie. So they're making the big bucks off of this. They made the big bucks off of the Barbie movie a few years ago. They're playing off of nostalgia very much. And we draw to it. Transformers is coming up with they're doing the 40th anniversary of their film. They're going to do a re-release in a couple months, and they're really feasting on that. I went to the comic book shop in Sioux City, and I saw stuff with Thundercats, and if they ever do a Thundercats movie, I'd love to. I think they really need to talk to Travis Knight. I think is the name of the director. I think that's the name. But the name of the director for this movie, Masters of the Universe. He also directed the Transformers Bumblebee, which that was the best Transformers movie to date because it filled that nostalgia parts. he understands the assignment. When you're doing films of property, of intellectual properties from the 80s, you know, you gotta tiptoe. You're gonna introduce new things, you're gonna do things differently, but you gotta be smart about it. Because if you want to make money, you have to remind the audience why they liked it in the first place. But you also got to design it in a way that you capture the new audience. And he did that with Bumblebee. I think he did that with Bumblebee, that it just didn't do well at the box office. And I think it didn't do well at the box office because Michael Bay kind of ruined a lot of goodwill when it came to Transformers. Similarly, but here with Masters of the Universe, he's getting another chance at it. And I really hope that parents would take their kids to this. Like fathers would bring their sons to see this movie. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit. But again, I go back to the question about nostalgia. Why do we have this longing and desire for something of the past? You know, it was so awesome back last August seeing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the theaters, and it did big at the box office for a movie that had been released, came out in theaters 26 years ago, or 25 years ago, 35 years ago, 35-year-old movie, and it did well at the box office. I mean, like, it made millions of dollars, multiples of millions of dollars, which is impressive for a re-release. There is a desire and a longing for that. And could it be, I mean, sometimes it's, you know, we want to say, well, the stories back then were better, but that's not the case with the Masters of the Universe. Masters of the Universe was definitely not, its storytelling was not a strong suit. But we still love the characters. We love these heroic characters. And this fantastical world. We are just drawn to it. And again, but in general, nostalgia, I think maybe it's the reality that our life now is difficult. There are challenges we didn't have to deal with as a kid. And when we watch these, we remember that. But I think there's also value to that. Is to ask, who were we? Because we deal with kids. You're going to deal with kids. You're going to deal with people who are now the age that you once were. It is beneficial to remember who you were and relate to kids, to your kids, especially if you have them. And put yourself in their shoes, recognizing that it's not the same, there's differences, but there's still similarities. It also gets you to ask, like, the person I am now, would my 10-year-old self be glad of the person I have become? I think looking in the past makes us think about who we are now. Are we on a good path or a bad path? Are there things I need to change or things I need to refocus to get back on the track, to get back on the path? But sometimes that can lead us to despair and feel like we can never get back to it. I don't know if I have a good answer. I mean, that's just kind of me rambling about this talk about nostalgia. The other thing I wanted to highlight in this movie, and I brought it up a moment ago, is the theme of... So, Barbie was a movie for little girls being nostalgic, or little girls who are now adults, being nostalgic of who they once were. He-Man is the reverse, is that for boys. And what I like in this movie is it presents, I believe, what is a healthy masculinity. And we don't. This is why I actually do think this is a good movie to bring young men, young boys, to see. The reason is because it is a movie that is presenting a healthy form of masculinity. The main character is empathetic. He's compassionate. He's kind. And that is presented as a strength. Now, and I like they show it in the trailer, so I don't feel like I'm spoiling too much. But he says that, but there's this point where Skeletor says to him, "You are weak," or something like that. "You have no strength," or he says. And finally he says, "I am strong. I'm just pulling my punches." But he says this line, he says, "I am strong. I just don't like to use it." And that is a wonderful illustration line for healthy masculinity. Because the thing is, if you watch my video earlier this week when I reviewed Shrek, I talked about Genesis chapter 3. And Genesis chapter 3 and the man failing to protect his wife from the dragon. This may come off as sexist or not politically correct or whatever. But the reality is that the male body and the female body are designed differently. Men, on average, no, not always, but on average, the average man is stronger than the average woman. The average man is faster than the average woman. And if you do not believe me, I can at least demonstrate very easily the speed part. And I'm sure if I did enough researching, I could find some of this in terms of the strength part. But if you were to look at the fastest 100-meter dash for women in the history of the world, and you were to compare that to the fastest 100-meter dash for high school boys in just about any given state in the United States of America, most, with some exceptions, because some states just don't have a lot of people, but with some exceptions, the fastest woman of all time would not be good enough for top 10 high school boys. Not college, not adult, high school. And this shows the gap between male strength and speed versus female strength and speed. And I know that, and the thing is why does God give men this strength and this speed? These gifts? Is it so they can use it to beat up on people? Is it so that they can beat up on their children, on women? Of course not. Far from it. That strength exists to defend, to protect, to provide for. Never. So when he says that line, I don't like to use it, is even though you may have the strength, and this is not just a physical strength, this could even be talking about your strength of speech, your strength of intelligence, your strength of wit. There's various types of strengths that we have. As a man, healthy masculinity does not ever want to use it against another person. This kind of, for me, so I'm a person that I don't like to drink. I don't drink much. And understand, I don't believe it's a sin to drink alcohol. I think it's perfectly acceptable. There's scripture prohibitions against getting drunk, but there isn't prohibitions about drinking altogether. But see, once in an extremely rare while I might drink something. But generally, I don't drink alcohol. And part of the thing is I am a little weary of being drunk. And I definitely have never been drunk, and I don't want to ever be drunk. because I don't know what I am like drunk. Now, there's some people, when they're drunk, they're just goofy and silly. And there are some that are mean and nasty. Because what it is you're a person when they're drunk, they lose their inhibition. They lose the things that they guard, protect themselves against the things that can make them do bad or go bad. And the thing is like, I don't fully know all of what my strength is. And I would hate to find it out the wrong way and use it against someone. I never, when I was growing up, I had kids that I went to school with people who bullied me that, were not nice to me. And this is kind of one of those reasons why superhero movies, He-Man, this Masters of the Universe movie draws on other films. It definitely is drawing off of Thor. Both Thor, like the first movie Thor, as well as Thor Ragnarok. It's drawing off of both of them in various ways. Although, in terms of what it draws from the original Thor movie, I think Masters of the Universe does it better. But honestly, I think what it has almost as much in common is with fairy tales. And when I mean fairy tales, I mean princess fairy tales. Think about probably the most famous example of this I can think of is Cinderella. Where this girl who is picked on, pushed around by her 3 ugly, nasty, mean stepsisters, is given this wondrous gift from a fairy godmother, and she becomes beautiful, and she becomes the talk of the ball, and she finds her Prince Charming. He-Man or the Masters of the Universe is basically a male version of that. And it demonstrates a deep longing that is in boys and many men. Is you see this kid who's pushed around, he can't really fend for himself very well. Until he meets not a fairy godmother, but a sorceress. And he turns into this super strong guy. I mean, the movie, the character Shazam also plays in a very similar style to this. And he's able to defend the people he loves. And he cares about. And that's how I think men generally see it. Is like you don't... And it's not that you don't defend people because they're weak. I said this in the last video. You don't want your desire to defend someone is not because they're weak, and your desire to defend them is not so you could get the girl. Because the thing is actually if you watch like a lot of stories, the guy does. I mean, he after many years he eventually gets her, but quite often he doesn't. Especially in the more longer stories, they don't get the girl. Even after saving him many times, because you're not doing it to get her. You're doing it so that she would live. Whether that's with you or someone else. Obviously, you want it to be you. But honestly, you just want her to be happy. Whoever that's with. And so, like I said, what you see in this film is a longing of a lot of men, a lot of boys. Is they're pushed around, they're beat up, and you never want to use strength against people because you don't want to hurt people. If you've been pushed around, if you've been bullied, if you've been pushed into lockers like Adam was as a kid, you know what that pain is. You know what that humiliation is like. And the thing is when you have a heart of gentleness, a heart of kindness, patience, self-control, those type of things, you don't want others to feel your pain. You know what it's like to be hurt, and you don't want to do it to them. And what you see in Prince, and that's what I like, and that is what you see with Adam is kind of that healthy masculinity. You want to be strong. You want to defend and protect people. Not because you can. Not so that you could do it whatever you want. You do it. You want to have it for when it is needed and it's necessary. Though you have the strength, I have the power. Though I have the power, I don't want to have to use it. So, it is a great movie, and I think, is it perfect? No. And and does it have humor? I don't mind the humor. I don't mind that it acknowledges the cheesiness of the franchise. The parts that are on Earth are not very much. The trailer makes it look like it's a lot more on Earth than it is. Far more of the movies on Eternia than on Earth. But the parts that are, I couldn't help but think of a certain movie that came out in 1999, and when they actually reference it, I was like, oh, it was so great. I'm not even saying what it is because I don't want to spoil it, but if you see in the movie, you'll recognize it as soon as it happens. I like some of the cameos. I like some of the Easter eggs, callbacks. There are 3 after credit scenes, just as a note to everyone. Go sit and watch them. They're all worth it. It was fun nostalgia. And like I said, this is one of those things where I'm a single guy. I'm not married. But it's one of those things where I wish I was a father of a young son, because it would be great to be able to go to that movie and watch that movie, and both the kid and myself are watching it and enjoying it and just soaking it in, but for different reasons. I'm soaking it because it's remembering me when I was the child's age, and it is a new world being explored for him. And then you could go back and watch the cartoons, which, by the way, are all on Amazon right now, on Amazon Prime. And I started watching some of those last night as well. So there you go. There is my review. If I were to do like the 5-star review, I'd probably say 3.5 is probably what I give. And understand, this is a fresh review. I just saw it yesterday. If I were to watch it in a year from now, would I say the same thing? I don't know. But for now, I give it a 3.5-star review. I don't really have a lot of complaints about it. I mean, it's not exactly what I call a masterpiece. It's not going to win any Oscars, but I enjoyed it from start to finish. So go enjoy this movie. I hope you go watch it. If you have young boys that you are raising, bring them, let them see healthy masculinity. So, blessings in Jesus' name. Amen.